Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I am your host, Armando Venditti, and I have a very special guest today, Mr. Bill Schuster. How's it going, Bill?
What's going on, Armando?
It's a Friday morning in Edmonton. We got the smoke coming in from the wildfires that are like just west of us, and it's like I'm ready to leave
Yeah.
myself. I'm ready to go. It's like screw the house, let's take the dogs and run, and just get to the airport and get out of here. But no, we're doing good. Things are good. What about yourself?
That's pretty decent. Pretty decent. I'm doing my usual, as I always seem to do on these shows, going with no sleep due to my work schedule. But that's how I roll. That's when my brain goes sideways half the time and keeps things interesting.
I completely get it about the no sleep situation. Believe me, in bed by midnight, up by 5 ish, heavy on the ish, if I can help it. It's not easy, keeping going, to try and keep things going, but we do the best we can, right?
Oh yeah.
So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do today is, as you can see, Bill is wearing a fantastic pink shirt from the Truth About Love tour. Everyone knows that album cover as he stands up. Yeah, he did a model show for me before we started taping, guys. It was wonderful. I mean it.
Pro.
But what was that?
I'm a pro.
Oh no, he's a pro, guys. I'm telling you. It's like but he's a professional too. So we're gonna keep this, at least PG today. So we're gonna and what was gonna happen was originally we were gonna do 2 episodes. One on Roger Waters today, album ranking on Roger Waters, which we still will do and momentarily. And Bill's wife Stacy was gonna join us for a ranking of Pink, ranking the albums of Pink, which we still will do, but we're gonna do that next week. So a lot of stuff coming up here. And Bill and I just formulated an idea for doing another episode after this that going to be basically a rant. So you know how I love my rants, right? So, but what we're going to do is we're going to rank the albums in this segment of one Roger Waters, bassist, and I'd say at this point he considers himself a co-founder of Pink Floyd, lead vocalist, co-lead vocalist again, sorry, um, and main songwriter of the band, main leader of the band, depending who you talk to, you know. But it's funny. Um, I counted four. We discussed doing 4 solo albums, right? Like that. That
Yep.
he is, yeah. Not the opera stuff, not the yes. So the main 4 solo albums. And as I said in my David Gilmour episode that's going to air next week. Stay tuned, please. That I was surprised that Roger Waters, as prolific as he is as a songwriter, that he's only done 4 main solo albums in his catalog. So that made this ranking quite easy. I mean,
Yeah.
for us as we were talking. So, how did you find this ranking when you were going over your stuff?
This probably going to be one of the easier ones because, as you said, the small catalog, and I knew going in how this was going to be, and nothing changed for me. So no surprises for me in my ranking.
Mm-hmm.
It is as it has been for years. Of course, had the 25-year wait in between the third and fourth album.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, yeah, David Gilmour is no different in that he did his album About Face in 1984, and then he did the follow up in 2015, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like what basically you're thinking like, what the hell, right? Like, what
At
was?
least Dave had the 2 albums under the Floyd name in between.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Roger
that's
was
true.
just God, who knows what Roger was doing all those years. Definitely
Suing
not.
Pink Floyd, basically. So yeah, We're not going to get into that though.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a whole other episode. That's
tell me about it. That could be another one. No, anyways, okay, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for diverting here. What we're gonna do is we are going to rank Roger Waters' discography. So I will let my co-host for this episode go first. What is your fourth?
thank you, Armando. You want to say though? I just want to let Roger know if he happens to be watching. I have an answer to your question. Which one's pink? Alicia Moore is pink.
There you
It's one of
go.
you guys. Here she is.
There you go.
You're welcome, Roger.
Hopefully you're watching, Roger. Go on.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure our celebrity has traveled far and wide, and he has heard tell, and he is going to. He's probably in the comments.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope. Okay.
All right. My number 4 is the most recent. Is this the life we really want? That I had that torturous 25-year wait for after Amused to Death in '92. As someone who was a huge Waters fan, yeah, a quarter of a century between albums was I'd finally given up on him. I thought he was just not going to do anything else, and when this was announced, it blew my mind. Just the fact that it was coming out. So I think he could have put out like Lou Reed's Metal Machine music, and I'd have been thrilled just because it was a new Roger Waters album. But
Yeah.
uh, it's much better than that, though.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's actually quite a good album. It definitely brings some of the old Pink Floyd tropes back up deliberately, obviously, and I think part of that was the producer Nigel
Godridge.
Goodrich.
Godridge.
Godrich. That's what I was thinking. I wasn't quite sure on the pronunciation there, but yeah, if I remember correctly, he actually had ideas to bring Roger back to the old sound a bit.
Mhm. Mhm. I would agree. Yeah, 25 years is a hell of a long time to wait for, I mean, because he has done other, like, we mentioned he's done an opera album, concept album, and I mean, but just an actual straightforward Roger Waters album, what 25 years is a long time to wait for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
So without getting too in depth into the politics, which is kind of difficult talking about Roger, of course.
Yeah.
That's kind of his thing. But I think uh, now I don't know this for sure. This is just me speculating. I don't remember reading anything about this, but based on the lyrics and comments that he's made live, and uh, I think he was inspired by both Brexit and by the election of Donald Trump here in the States. I think both those things kind of brought him out of his lethargy, so to speak, creatively, and
Hmm.
fired him up a bit, got his political juices going, and he wanted to say some things about it.
Hmm.
He went a bit deeper than those inspirations. Obviously, he had some pretty cool personal lyrics on here too. "Wait for Her," for example, is quite a lovely song,
Hmm.
and not necessarily something that people might expect from Roger typically, which is nice. It's
Yeah.
cool to see that side of him, that more tender side.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. No, I agree. I agree. I mean, Roger Waters has always been politically motivated. He basically, I just quickly, I had somebody say to me when I was doing my workout one day, a couple of years back, and they were saying, that they had been to the most recent show before the tour before this one that I was at. And they said, yeah, it was a good show, but it was too political. It was too political. And I just sat there and I thought, well, duh. I mean, like, this is Roger Waters. I mean, he's always going to have something to say. And he's always going to be the type that, this is pissing me off. You should be mad too. You shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't take what's just given to you. You should always question if you feel like you should question something. So, I mean, you think, guys, if you're going to a Roger Waters performance, just get used to it. You know what I mean? It's just,
You kind of, if you don't know by now what you're getting into with Roger, where have you been all these years?
it's like walking into a Waters concert and expecting Liberace. It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
Do
that
you know
would
what I
be
mean? Like
entertaining, though.
it's not gonna happen. So no, that's a good pick. Yeah, you probably hear my dog barking in the background, so forgive me for that. That was a good pick. Interesting. My number 4, so I've got the dogs running around in the background. My number 4 is Radio Chaos. Okay. And oh, ladies and gentlemen, Bob just came home. So
Bob.
everyone say hi, Bob. Radio Chaos, yes. Released in 87. Yeah, I like the album. I mean, originally it was supposed to be a double album. And CBS, Sony, Columbia basically told them to make it a single album because it was, he had just gotten out of Pink Floyd. He had just been dealing with their lawsuit and came out the other side of it worse for the wear. And in that, and on a serious note, David Gilmour and Nick Mason had won the right to use the name of Pink Floyd. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, Roger Waters went to court to basically to buy the rights to the name of Pink Floyd. And because there was no official contract drawn up on that point, he was not able to successfully win this lawsuit. He basically walked into court and said, I am Pink Floyd. Without me, you don't have a band. So the court said, you're out of your mind. They can still record under Pink Floyd. So
Sorry about that. Somebody coming by outside got the dogs triggered here. So.
no problem.
Your dogs are
This
not the only
show,
one.
don't worry about it. We're fine. We're fine. No, it's fine. I mean, I've got two little puppies outside barking up for their daddy, so it's okay. So yeah, I mean, he wanted to do a double album. He acquiesced to the record company and management, and to this day, he regrets doing that. The album is again a concept album. I mean, Roger Waters is all about concept and ideas, and the concept was, it's a bit convoluted to me. It's the concept was about a boy named a kid named Billy who has cerebral palsy, and he's nonverbal, unlike me, which I'm very verbal and do have cerebral palsy. As Bill laughs because he knows I'm verbal, and basically he starts listening to this radio station, and this is where it gets a little convoluted for me, where he feels like he's able to pick up sonic waves through the air. And so yeah, the album had singles, Radio Waves, which is a good song. Other songs of note are Sunset Strip, The Tide is Turning, Who Needs Information, of in terms of the album though, and I've said this before on other shows, and I'm going to say it again, this album for me sounds like it's stuck in the 80s with its, the simulated drums, that, the treated drums, the bass synths, etc., just overall production. I don't think it's aged well myself. And Waters himself has denounced the album since its release. He doesn't like it. And of course, he wrote it, so I guess he can say that. But he wanted to stick with the idea of doing a double album. Well, Mr. Waters, on a side note, you've redone Dark Side of the Moon. Why don't you redo Radio Chaos? You messed with a masterpiece. I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion. So that's my number 4. Back over to Bill.
All right. Thank you, Armando. Yeah, that I agree. I would like to hear him do an update on Radio Chaos while he still can. That would be
no
excellent.
dig there.
Well, let's see. Some people might think I would be talking about that album next, but I'm not.
Go on.
The one I'm going to talk about next might be surprising, actually, because objectively speaking, many people consider this his best. And considering that I love political lyrics, and out of all his 4 solo albums, this one is absolutely loaded with it. This should be right up my alley. And I do love it, but the other two just have more of a sentimental, personal connection for me. So my number 3 is Amused to Death. An outstanding album. I think it's a masterpiece, and yet I rank his first 2 ahead of it. Go figure. I can't objectively defend that. Frankly, I just love those 2 more. It's this. The only weakness I could think of on this album is the length. It's nearly double the length of the 2 earlier albums. I think that was it was in the heart of the early CD era when this came out. And it's like Roger found a larger canvas, and like so many others, felt he needed to paint every square inch of it. And I'm not going to complain about more music typically, but it's more of a commitment. I could sit down to a 40-minute album much easier than nearly an 80-minute album. So I'm less likely to put on Amused to Death in general, unless I'm really just in the state of mind for it and have the time. But yeah, it does not get as much play as the first 2. It's like an aging wine that comes out, and here we go. I haven't had this in a while.
Exactly. No, I tend to agree with you in that. I mean, I've always said that if the music is good, doesn't matter how many songs are on there, doesn't matter the length of the album. But I do tend to think that there are, and I'm probably going to sort of contradict myself, and I don't care. That's the way it is. I do tend to think that there were artists and groups that maybe just put songs on a CD just for the sake of filling up space. There, no pun intended here, but that saying of less is more, that's, in that respect. So yeah, no, I agree. And that is a good album. I think we'll get into that later on my ranking. But yeah, no, that's a good choice. That's a good choice. And yeah, he had a lot of people working on the album with him, like Rita Coolidge and Don Henley. And we were speaking of the Eagles before we started taping and stuff. So yeah.
Some guy named Beck.
Jeff Beck. Yeah. Some guy named Beck. It's like, yeah, I just caught on to that. Jeez. Okay. Armando, you need
had that loser
coffee.
song.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I think people know this guy named Jeff Beck, right? Fortunately, he's no longer with us, ladies and gentlemen, and that was a sad passing.
Did do fine work on this album, though. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he does. He does. Moving on, we must carry on, ladies and gentlemen. My number 3 is Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. Came out in 84. Another, well, his first of many concept albums, taking place between the hours of 4:30 a.m. and 5:11 a.m. On no particular day, in no particular city, no particular state in the US, I would imagine, because, that's, I don't know, it just seems to be an American labeled album in terms of what he was trying to do here. This idea was originally conceived in 1977 after the Animals tour, and he presented this idea to the band Pink Floyd. If you guys don't know, he was in Pink Floyd, and if you're living in a cave, and it was either going to be this album or another project that he had in mind called Bricks in the Wall, which eventually became The Wall. You may have heard of that album. But after much debate,
That one?
that one,
No, not quite that one.
no, but that's a good one too. That's a good one too. He is full of props, ladies and gentlemen. I love it. And and after much debate, the band did decide on working on The Wall. Although David Gilmour has gone on to state that he liked the music on Pros and Cons better than The Wall. What to say about this album? Features David Sanborn on saxophone, Eric Clapton on lead guitar and guitar synths and backing vocals. He was basically his main guitar player for the sessions. Was not able to go with him did go with him on tour, I believe, at some point.
Part of the tour.
Part of the tour, yes. Thank you for that. And yeah, this was, I remember when this album came out as a kid. My brother-in-law was a major Pink Floyd and Roger Waters fan. Played this all the time. Songs of note are on the album. The title track, Pros and Cons, Every Stranger's Eyes, which was the only two singles from the album. And basically it talks about a guy who is having a dream one night, and he goes from one scene in a dream to the next. And he's going basically through a midlife crisis, which we all do at some point to some extent in our lives. I think I'm about to have one when I get off the show, actually. So, I mean, the album is good. There is, you can tell, how am I going to put this? English is good, yeah. Armando, speak English. You can tell leftovers from the Wall, because in terms of the musical pieces. I mean, he could have a beautiful, soft acoustic piece. His voice, you can tell that he's right up to the mic in terms of his singing ability, because he enunciates every word, but then a shriek will come out, and if you're drinking a cup of coffee, forget it. It's all over you, because you've got, I mean, sonically it goes all over the place, up and down, in terms of soft passages to loud shrieking guitars and shrieking vocals. Roger Waters is masterful at shrieking, right?
She is.
There is one track that starts off, I believe, side 2, Gone Fishing, track 7 on the CD, if you're watching, if you have the CD version. And there's a refrain from the Fletcher Memorial Home, a little bit of a guitar refrain from the Fletcher Memorial Home, which is one of my favorite tracks on the final cut. Yes, I do like the final cut. But yeah, I do like the album. in as individual tracks. I don't think that as a concept album, I think it was the weaker of the two. You got to remember, this was also written at a time when he was also working on The Wall. So I think one sort of bled into the other in terms of musical ideas. And I think that as a concept album, it's a bit weak, but the playing on it is stellar. I mean, Eric Clapton does a bit of a finger picking style on his playing, and I think it's just fantastic. And just a little note, a quick note, and then I'll shut up. I promise. When he did the tour, he said to Eric Clapton and Tim Renwick, which was the second guitarist, he said, I don't want you guys to do any extended solos on these tracks. I want the album played in its entirety, exactly the way it should be played. No flourishes, no grandstanding, just play the record and let it go. And Tim Renwick said, you know what? And that's fine. But he said it took a lot of the spontaneity out of playing live. So but yeah, that's my number 3. I'm sorry, I'm long-winded. Forgive me. I hand it back over to my illustrious co-host, Bill.
Hey, it's your show. You can be as long-winded as you like.
No, it's our show today. So
All right. Well, this is unfortunately, my number 2 is unfortunately, spoiler from earlier here to give this away, the only one that I currently own on vinyl. I just happened upon a $6 copy of this at our local record store before they closed down last year. And score! I used to have an original of Pros and Cons with the uncensored cover on vinyl, and sadly that made its way out of my collection, and I regret it to this day. But I also have the CD here too, of course. But
gotta be a collector.
that's right. I definitely have a higher opinion of Radio Chaos than most people. Uh, I think that you had mentioned it being dated, essentially talking about the 80s sound and everything, and that's a frequent point when people talk about this album that is brought up, and it's a valid point. It's accurate,
Yeah.
but to me, I think that's a good thing. I like the fact that this screams 1987, that it's locked in time. It's got the Live Aid reference. This takes me back to when I was, 18, 19 years old, and what I was doing in my life, what was going on in the world at that time. And it was pretty important to me at the time. I had it on cassette then, so I've got all kinds of media formats for this album.
Yeah. Those Chrome cassettes that CBS used to release, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I would actually love to see Roger redo this. Yeah, I get that he doesn't like it, and I understand why. And I'd love to see what it would be like as a double album.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty happy with it as a single album, just 8 tracks. The story took me a long time to really grasp.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
is confusing, it's convoluted, and it takes a lot of reading the liner notes. And if you've ever seen a man on the CD trying to read this small green print,
Yeah.
is not easy. I mean, it's easier than trying to read the stuff on the wall with that.
Yeah. Thanks to Gerald Scarf for that.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a little better on the record. At least it's larger. It's much more legible, but still that bright green font. Wow.
Yeah. It's a bit much.
Yeah, it's not easy on the eyes, but if you can survive it, there are some pretty good lyrics in there.
Yeah.
And after quite a few reads through the story synopsis that's included, I think it starts to become clearer. At least it did for me. But again, it took a long time really there was a lot of it I was just in for the music, and I was picking out certain particular songs,
Yeah.
like "Who Needs Information" and "The Powers That Be." Those two always stood out early on as
Yeah.
even just being separate from the album.
Hmm.
Loved lines like they say, "The toothless get ruthless." And
Hmm.
just
Oh
that's
yeah.
just perfect Roger line right there.
Oh yeah. No, he comes up with them. He can.
Oh yeah,
He's
and yeah,
a lot of his lyrics do hit the nail on the head.
yes, yes, they do.
Unfortunately, he's accused of being too preachy at times, and
I'd be
uh,
disappointed if he wasn't. That's what I expect from
but
Rogers.
that's exactly it. It's like, yeah. I mean, just a little question here: what is the difference between what Roger Waters does and what Bono does?
Exactly. Yeah,
You know, one
Bono.
is British, one is Irish. I mean, like, do you know what I mean? It's like there's no difference in, you know. But yeah, no, I completely get that. Let me ask you just a quick question, and then we'll get on to my number two. Do you think that maybe the album would have benefited from of a more live sound in terms of the drums and
Um, I don't think it would have had the same character then. It might have been technically superior, but I think this album is what it needs to be
okay,
that relic, that time locked piece of art that I like. That's
okay,
I don't want it to sound like everything else. There are certain albums in the '80s. Uh, I brought up this point on other shows before when discussing some particularly '80s things
hmm,
that yeah, the dated aspect is really a pro for me,
okay,
where it's usually not so much for other people. To me, I really like that. It's like a time machine.
okay.
And I will say one. I'm going to point out another little line in here. Where is it at? It's it must be, yes, yes. Ah, there it is. Okay. In the tide is turning, where he says, used to look in on the children at night in the glow of their Donald Duck light, frighten myself with the thought of my little ones burning.
Yeah,
Yeah, that when I became a parent and my kids were little, and yeah, that line really, really resonated then because
yeah, it
yeah,
would. Yeah, of course.
but this album, that song in particular, still has the power to move me. And I think back to Live Aid at the time, it seemed like a big deal.
Yeah,
It seemed like the tide really was turning. And I don't want to get all morose and teary eyed like I did during the wall discussion we had, but
it's fine. It's fine.
generally, yeah, the song can be both uplifting and depressing also, because I don't think the tide was turning near as much as we thought back in
Yeah,
those days,
yeah.
which is kind of a sobering sort of thing. So,
Hmm. No,
but
it's true. It's true.
it's still cool to go back to that moment in time and just feel that, those kids in the sun wrested
Yeah,
power from the hands of the warlords.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah, it was a moment of hope, and it's something to cling. That maybe there will be more of those moments of hope in the future.
yeah.
So,
I hear
but
you.
yeah, I've rambled on enough about that. So,
No, after
hey,
my number four. I mean, come on, please.
wait till we get to our number ones. Let's see how long winded we get.
Okay. Uh, all valid points. You made valid points.
Thank you.
Um, my number two is Amused to Death. Um, released in 92. Um, I do agree with Roger Waters when he said that this was an underrated album. Um, I do believe if I don't have the disc with me, I do have the disc, the physical form. I do believe it was produced by Patrick Leonard along with Roger Waters. Features
Yes.
contributions from, yes, thank you. Features contributions from Jeff Beck, Don Henley on back in co-lead vocals, Rita Coolidge of all people on some on other parts of the album. Um, it clocks in at 72 minutes. I mean, it is not only is it a long listen, it's a hard listen at times because he gets very serious. And I mean, again, he'll have a beautiful acoustic part going on, very melodic, soft acoustic part, and he's right up to the mic, and you can basically hear him breathing over your neck. And all of a sudden, something will come in like a dive bomb, like a plane dropping bombs on you or something. And he's got that ability to do soft and harsh sonic, uh, sonically, and in terms of dynamics, very um, very opposites is the word that keeps coming to mind. It goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. um Standard tracks for me are What God Wants Part One, um, Three Wishes, uh, Bravery Being Out of Range is another fantastic track. Um, and again, sorry, itchy eye, dry here in Alberta. Um, Don Henley delivers an amazing vocal on his on the album, and so does Rita Coolidge, even though she's basically background vocals. But it's a good album. This was a recently reissued on vinyl only, which I don't understand, but what are you gonna do? And this was also, I believe, at the time on CD. I think it is done in Q Sound. Q Sound at the time was considered to be the up and coming premium um, remix format, in terms of sonically. You could basically hear something that's basically come at you in surround sound. It was a very short-lived format. Not many CDs were done in this, but Roger Waters had this done, I believe, in Q Sound. So yeah, that's my number two. And I think it's a stronger album than Radio Chaos and Pros and Cons. I do think at this point that people were getting tired of the being hit over the head with the concept albums, and I'm pissed off at this. You have to be pissed off too. This is why you should be pissed off. Um, People will only allow themselves to be preached to a certain point, and then they'll back off. They'll basically tune out. So yeah, this is my number two, and I'm sticking to that. So back
All
to my
right.
illustrious co-host.
Thank you. That was actually, I'm surprised. I expected that to be your number one. Looking at both, obviously, we both know what our number ones are going to be now, but we almost have inverted lists.
Yeah, and just a really quick note. The original cover of the CD has a picture. It's a picture of I guess, a chimpanzee watching TV, right? And to me, people have different views on what that cover means, right? With just the big eye watching. To me, it kind of means that, um, it's sort of the chimpanzee looking at stuff on TV, like news events and whatever, basically saying that these humans had everything at their fingertips to do everything right, and they've screwed up everything so far. And they say that we need to be looked after by them, whereas we're basically the supreme being in terms of we know what not to do. Why don't you? Kind of thing, right? So I mean, but there you go.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And that's, yeah.
So not to
That
get
is
too
it.
politically philosophical, but yeah, no,
Uh, Again, Roger Waters, how can you completely avoid it? Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and there is one album that pretty much avoids politics in his catalog, which, considering I love political music and I love Roger's take on most political things, uh, it's probably surprising that the pros and cons of hitchhiking with this blasted censored cover, which drives me crazy. But this is my favorite. Not only my favorite Roger Waters solo album, it's my favorite album of 1984.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of good albums that came out in 1984.
Mhm.
Certain purple one comes to mind.
Which should also have been a double album.
Yeah, yeah. This I don't know. I've always enjoyed the Dream here. It's it's another one much like Radio Chaos in that it took me a number of years to really grasp a lot of
Mhm.
the story, because the story is kind of here, there, and everywhere.
Mhm.
But it is a dream sequence though, so that's kind of fair enough. It's gets to play fast and loose with time and reality a bit.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love the dynamics you've been speaking about with the quiet parts and the loud sudden screams and the rising to my surprise. There were Arabs with knives at the foot of the bed.
There you
Right at the
go.
foot of the bed. Oh yeah,
There you go. I mean,
with
yeah, I mean,
headphones. Oh, in a dark room.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give
No,
everybody a
no,
heart
no,
attack,
no,
but
it's fine. No, because I mean, yeah, it's right. Because I mean, you have that, like everything's so quiet, and he's right up to the mic, and every word is enunciated, even with like like I didn't know how loud a P could sound, the letter P, like when he, and then it's like boom, everything explodes right at the lying at the staying at the foot of the bed. So yeah, no, I mean, I completely get it. Yeah,
so he's yeah, this is one of his best examples of that. This whole album is loaded with that kind of stuff.
yeah,
To this day, anytime I'm around a digital clock, whether, well, since I work until 7 in the morning here,
hmm,
I typically go to break at 5 a.m. So sometimes I'm often looking at the clock around that time on my computer screen at work, and whenever I see it's about to change to 5:01 a.m., I have to wait and see, because 5:01 a.m. always makes me think of the title track from this.
yeah,
That's I don't know why I remembered that particular time of that song above all the others. I mean, it
yeah,
was the main single, but yeah, I don't know. But it's fun just to think of this song every time I see that time pop up. Uh, I think this is probably my favorite guitar playing that Eric Clapton has ever done.
yeah,
And that's, yeah, yeah. He does a bit of Gilmore sounding stuff in here along with his
yeah,
own particular style.
yeah.
It's a nice mix of both, but it seems like Eric himself didn't necessarily understand what was all the fuss was about with this album and the
Yeah.
tour, but he did what was needed, and it works really well in the context of this album.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, there are plenty of great lines. I don't want to repeat the entire lyric sheet, but there are things like in uh, Sexual Revolution, like as I've always said, I prefer your lips red, not what the good Lord made, but what he intended.
Yeah, yeah,
Just those clever little, yeah, Roger Waters lines there. Uh, and I have always, profanity alert, I've always loved it in Roger's work and in Pink Floyd albums when the female background vocalists are singing things like, fuck it then, when
yeah,
he's
yeah,
saying, fuck it then, take the
yeah,
kids back to town, maybe I'll see you around.
yeah,
Yeah, that, yeah, I don't hear the lack of melody that people often speak of with this album. To me, it's absolutely loaded with melodies. It's just one continuous. It's almost like a symphony with
Yeah.
different movements rather than songs,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think it really works well in that way. It needs to be listened to as a piece. Definitely, it's not something to
Yeah,
be broken up.
definitely.
So a listener that wants a comfortably numb or a money or something to subtract from the album,
You're not gonna get that.
go up. No. Pros and cons of hitchhiking. The single, it did get a lot of radio play in '84 around this area, but even then it was weird. I mean, Gilmore's About Face the same year had like four different songs getting played on the rock stations, and
Yeah,
yeah, 5:01 a.m. off here was the only one I ever heard from Roger's album, and it was, what is that song? What is he? What is this about? Yoko Ono? What? I
yeah,
don't get it.
yeah.
But yeah, now I love it. At the time, I was confused, and I wouldn't trade this beauty. Someday I'm going to get a nice replacement, uncensored vinyl copy again,
Mhm.
because this is just wrong. Censorship is bad, kids.
There you go. That's the public service announcement for the day.
That's
Yeah,
right.
no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Well, no, that's a good choice. That's a good choice. Um, my number one, um, is this the life we really want? Uh, and the older I get, the sentiment, is a lot clearer than when I was younger. It came out in I was going to say 1917, 2017. Produced by Waters and Nigel Godrich, who had worked with Coldplay, I believe. Uh, so yeah, and he urged Waters to forget the concept albums, to come back to doing song-based albums, individual tracks, not little vignettes of little quiet verbal passages and and then just going into this shrieking dive bomb, which he does do on this album. But the playing on the album is a lot more sparse. There's a lot more space in the music, and it's a lot more reflective and introspective of an album, which I would imagine Waters would be rebelling against Godrich to do this, but in the end, he agreed with him, and this album did very well. Um, the notable tracks for me are "Small the Roses," "Deja Vu," um, "The Last Refugee," which is a fantastic uh, piece of work. The album basically is still saying that Donald Trump sucks, right? But it's saying it in a very subtle way. You know, he's still saying, I'm pissed off. You should be pissed off too. But he's saying, why aren't you pissed off? Like, why aren't you noticing what I'm noticing? And yeah, I think it's a great album. That's the one I go to mostly. But now when I go to his catalog. So yeah, that is my number one. It hasn't changed. I did this ranking about a year ago, and I think a year is a good enough time to reflect and rethink things, and it's still the same for me. So
I'm curious. Do you think that the newness of "Is This the Life We Really Want" has anything to do with you going back to that one more now?
could possibly be, because I mean, you tend to sort of go for the ones that are recently released, right? To see if they still have the same impact on you, or will they have the impact? Will there be songs on a new album from an artist, an established artist, that have the same impact on you as their previous albums do, right? But to me, this album sounds like a man that's an individual, man or woman, that's resigning to the fact that yes, there is an issue here in the world, but I can only do so much as a person, right? It's up to us as a collective to do something together if you want. He's not forcing it down your throat, right? Whereas on the other albums, I kind of won't go there. But on the other albums, I kind of feel that he is kind of sort of ramming the political agenda down people's throats to an extent. You know what I mean? Like talking about, in Radio Chaos, talking about the Thatcher regime kind of thing, right? And the things that she was doing wrong. And it's like this album is more contemplative, right? Aside from the occasional shrieking and the dive bombing, this is an album that you can put on at night, no lights on. And I've said this before, even with the Gilmore albums, that the two latest Gilmore albums kind of take you away on a journey, right? On an island and rather that lock. This album is the same. It kind of takes you away on a journey and you're floating and you don't mind where you end up, but you will end up somewhere. Like you will end up in a different place where you were at the start of listening to the album. So that's what I like about it. If that makes any sense, ladies and gentlemen, if it doesn't, put the comments down below and tell me I'm an idiot, that kind of thing.
I think
But
it
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
I do have all right, just a quick off the cuff. Since the Final Cut is often called Roger's first solo album, where would you
Yeah.
rank the Final Cut if it actually was on this list? If there were 5 albums to rank here,
Number 3.
I think I I can't put it above Pros and Cons, but it'd probably be tied with Radio Chaos for me for second.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I really do like the Final Cut quite a bit. But
Because the Final Cut, again, is sort of a continuation of the Wall. So the Final Cut would sort of come first before Pros and Cons kind of thing. I mean,
they all kind of blend together in a way,
yeah, they do.
have the same DNA.
Yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Top 4 albums of Roger Waters, long-winded or not. That was the show today. I had fun, hopefully.
And we were all over the map. We were absolutely not predictable here. So
No, and that's good. That's good. I mean, you hear so many of these shows where people say, "Oh, well, that's my number one as well." No. We have differing opinions, and that is what makes these shows work. So, I'd like to thank my host, Mr. Co-host. Sorry, almost feel like he's been doing the show today for me, Mr. Bill Schuster, and Bill will be back on other episodes. If I can mention this, Bill, we've talked about doing rankings of Black Sabbath, album rankings of. We're going to do Pink next week. I promise you that. And because Bill's wife Stacy's going to join us for that, and that should be a barn burner of a show. I'm telling you right now.
that will be her first. So
You see, we're all about first on this channel, ladies and gentlemen. And we're also going to do rankings on, I believe we talked about Rush at some point, and we're going to be doing my God, some other stuff too. Possibly Joe Jackson. We're going to talk about doing Joe Jackson. I'm interested to do Joe Jackson with Bill. So hopefully you guys like the show. Please put your comments down below, and let us know what you think. Do you like these albums? Do you like our rankings? Do you think that we're nuts? Do you think that, the rankings should be flipped around? It's all about communication and getting in dialogue going here. So please, let us know what you think, and click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for any new content that's coming up. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, it is coming up. So for Mr. Bill Schuster, I am Armando Venditti, your host, and take care of one another and each other. And we will talk to you very soon. Okay? Bye for now.